Hello, everyone. My name is Hady Raphael, and today on the show, CF Montreal concedes late and loses in Austin. Samuel Piet breaks record for most MLS minutes played in a Montreal shirt. Nick Bontis resigns as tension continues to rise between Canada Soccer and the women national team players. That and a lot more on episode 122 of The Ball is Round. Hello again, everyone. I'm joined today by my friends Eve Powell and Elias Grigoriadis. How are you guys today?
Sunday scaries. How are you?
I'm fine. Elias?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. It's good to have the whole gang back together.
Are you back now? You're in full strength and healed and
Absolutely.
everything. Good.
Antibiotics are
Love
doing the
it.
trick, so we're doing great.
Nice. Love it. Love it.
Excellent.
So, hi to Roberto. Hi to Alain from Seattle. Thanks a lot for joining us. Eve, Wolves beat the Spurs and are now 13th in the EPL. Quite unexpected.
I know. Unexpected overall to beat Spurs, yeah. But still not gonna be happy until they're over like the 30-point line.
Because you're Eve, right? So
I'm pessimistic Eve.
Exactly. And Elias, Barcelona, Valencia. It was supposed to be a walk in the park, but it wasn't. 1-0 win for Javi's man. How do you feel?
There's always something that goes wrong. There's always but hey, you know what? They got the result they needed. Real Madrid drew later today, so that means they're now 9 points ahead. Um, kind of making up for losing against Almeria last week, which was just a bit disastrous. But when you're missing all these key players and all these injuries and suspensions, and Xavi was in the stands today, so you get your result and you get out. That's been the model for Barcelona this season, and if they keep producing results, I'm not going to complain.
Of course, you can't complain when you're first in the league, right? So
No,
let's not talk about Marseille, please, guys. We're just
No.
going to avoid the subject. And if Chan comes in and talks about Marseille, he's not going to be happy because I'm going to talk about his team.
I was gonna
So
say.
yeah. So if Chan is here, he better not talk to me about Marseille. So let's start the pod. Of course, we're here to talk about our local club, CF Montreal. Hernan Lozada's troops played their second game of the 2023 season yesterday, and this time it was away at the Q2 Stadium, a jam-packed and noisy stadium where Austin FC was hoping to win their first points of the season, which they did. Lozada made 3 changes to his starting lineup and crowded the midfield with 4 players, hoping to create more chances for CF Montreal. So let's look at the lineup with Jonathan Sirois in the nets for the first time with his first MLS start. Kamal Miller, Rudy Camacho, and Samuel Piet as a right center back. Lassi Lapalainen as a left wing back, and Aaron Herrera as right wing back. In the middle of the pitch, we weren't really certain of who's going to play where, but it was Victor Wanyama and Nathan Saliba as holding midfielders. Lozada renewed his faith to Nathan Saliba, which was a bit surprising, to see the young Canadian again. And we had Romel Kyoto that was supported up front as a striker, supported by Mathieu Chouanière and Sean Rea, who was also getting his first MLS start. Eve, were you surprised by the starting 11?
So obviously we knew that there was going to need to be some shuffling, given the situation at the central defense position. So I wasn't super surprised to see Samuel Piet go into central defense because despite what Lozada said last week, that was where he had finished the match. Then as it relates to, the other players, I think a lot of folks were a little bit concerned about Nathan Saliba's performance against Inter Miami. I was a little bit surprised, and I was kind of honestly relieved to see he got another start because, of course, I'm sure he wasn't thrilled with his performance against Miami either. Absolutely thrilled as well to see Sean Rea get a start because I thought he was an excellent spark versus Miami, in otherwise kind of a don't have a nice word for it, attack in that game. And yeah, so yeah, like I said, we knew that because of injuries, there was going to be some interesting shufflings. And like I said, glad to see some players get rewarded for their good entries in the previous match.
Yeah, it's interesting. And Elias, did you see it that way? When you looked at the names, were you expecting to see that exact same lineup with Piet sitting as a right center back, Chouanière sitting as an attacking midfielder? Were you expecting that?
I mean, Piet at center back wasn't that much of a surprise given the fact that they're missing 4 center backs now at this point. 3 or 4 center backs at this point. It's just a byproduct of him being a reliable ball winner and still good playing with his feet out of the back.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you're choosing between him and Wanyama, there was some consideration given that Wanyama has experience at center back. It's just that you need Wanyama's composure in the midfield, and he is not as athletic as he once was. And if you're going to need someone to run down, especially a very quick winger from Austin, then I'd much rather have Samuel Piet running somebody down than Victor Wanyama because his two talents are much more suited to that of the 6. I think Hernando Sada agreed when he was speaking to the media, and people were and Tony Marinaro was asking him about the distinction between the two. In the midfield, I think that the second I saw that Matko Milivojevic was going to be injured for an extended amount of time, I figured they need to pack the midfield. Right?
Yeah.
The fact that they have only one striker in doing so does kind of limit them, which is why it's so important to have these players that can play as a 10 and a striker, someone like Jean-Anthony Vissin or someone like Sunusi Ibrahim or even Mason Toy, who has shown that he has some ability to drop deep and play make, but they need to have at least 3 midfielders because you saw that when you had a 6 and 2 8s against Miami, there was no delivery to the attackers, and Sunusi and Kyoto were just completely isolated. And like you said, it's the attack was not there until Sean Rea stepped in, and he was kind of a deblock to kind of get things going because you need a 10 in a system like this because you need a transition from
no choice.
the offense from the defense to the offense, especially if you want to keep the ball and you don't want to play super directly, right? You play vertically fine, but if you're going to keep the ball on the ground and you don't have a 10, those are antitheses that can't work. So I wasn't surprised to see this lineup. I do think that Nathan Saliba is going to take some time, maybe coming off the bench now, just given that he had some good moments, especially with the ball.
In the second half, I think it was improved.
Exactly. Yeah. But
still...
he gave up the ball and he was lucky. Kamal Miller saved him from being the main reason that they would go up in the first half, right? And relatively early on, he was a terrible turnover, right? So in possession, he had good moments, but I think now Hernando Sada is going to be like, okay, you've had 2 starting positions. Let's maybe look to reshuffle a little bit and try out some different layouts for the midfield, especially if Samuel Piet won't be playing center back if they can get Joel Waterman back or Robert Torkelson back.
And actually, we have an interesting kind of comment on that on the tail end of your topic anyway, Elias, from Alain, who says, having Piet as right center back instead of Herrera has got to spell the end of ZBG in Montreal. Do you think it's too early to call that, or?
I think that's not an indictment of ZBG at right back so much as it is an indictment of how uncomfortable Herrera looked at center back.
Yeah.
Right? Because
and we saw it again last night.
Broguiard by no means didn't play badly, right? I mean, he wasn't as effective as he was last year, but he didn't have a bad game. He didn't play poorly when he was on against Inter Miami. He didn't
do anything
much, and he didn't do much, but he wasn't outright bad, right? And again, as a right wing back, you can't affect change unless you are getting the ball and you're moving, right? And Herrera just did not look comfortable in that right center back. He did not look like Joel Waterman. right? Joel
Yeah,
Waterman
I
was
don't.
No,
calm on the
no, no,
ball,
completely
who
agree with
is
you there.
I don't.
arguably one of the best progressive passers in MLS. When you have someone like that as your center back, then yeah, you're comfortable moving forward because you know that he's
Yeah,
good for it. But if it's a new partnership, then I understand why Rogier didn't really get to stamp his imprint on the game. But I think it's still a bit early to say that it was, Brogiard comes out of this looking poorly.
I just don't. I'm sorry, but I don't really agree with that with you.
Really?
Unfortunately, Elias. For me, ZBG. Like when you play in that system, the wingbacks are so important. They're the ones that
Mhm.
really do the overlap. They're the ones that cross the ball. They're the one that are a major part of the attacking threat, right? And ZBG in that first game, he didn't do anything. And for me, yes, he didn't do any mistakes. I agree with you, but he wasn't that attacking threat. He wasn't a part of that attacking threat. And for me, that doesn't play in his favor. So I agree with you about the partnerships not being great. With Herrera as a right center back and ZBG as a right wing back. But I also agree that I think that Aaron Herrera as a right wing back is so important for that system that unfortunately ZBG is kind of non-existent anymore in that rotation. Now, is he able to adjust himself to what Hernan Lozada is asking from him? That all depends on him and what he does in training. But because as of right now, it doesn't look very good for ZBG, in my
Mm,
opinion.
yeah, I agree.
So a very interesting question, Alain. Thanks a lot for asking it. So feel free, guys. Anybody, if you have questions, feel free to ask them, and we will try to answer them all, of course. Now let's take a look at that game because right from the start, Austin took control of the game and made sure to create chances in transition. Most of the time in transition, go quick up front, try to recover the ball as high as possible on the pitch, and try to put the danger in the box of CF Montreal. So after Fagundes' weak shot, easily grabbed by Sirois in the second minute of play, Pineda won the ball from Saliba's feet, and you talked about it a bit earlier, Elias. Around at the 10th minute, around the 10th minute, and then his cross deviated from on Jassy Zardes onto the foot of Rigoni, who was almost one-on-one with the keeper, but Kamal Miller made that save with the last
Yeah.
ditch tackle. He was so hyped after that tackle. It was
Yeah.
just really nice. What was your reaction on that play, Elias, when you saw Kamal Miller just tackling that ball?
Is incredibly relatable because I saw someone like myself who enjoys stopping goals more than scoring them, right? When you make a stop like that, yes, you want to see what went wrong because obviously you're at DEFCON 1 at that point, but at the same time, you are
Defcon 1.
insanely happy because you made the stop and you frustrated a forward. And so like that expression or that release of emotion was something that
Mm,
every center back can relate to because they've all done
Of
it at least
course.
once when you save an incredible opportunity like that and you kind of feel like you put the team on your back in some capacity. But at the same time, these are the kind of mistakes that Montreal had an incredibly difficult time dealing with last season, right? And those are the kinds of mistakes that are the reason their goals against were so much higher than their XG against. These goals against the
mhm.
run of player that spawned from one random mistake, and it's something that they were working so hard to kind of stamp out. And I understand that with injuries and a lack of familiarity, maybe that some of these may creep back up, but this is something that cannot become, a regular occurrence. You cannot have your
No.
center back sprawling. And let's also give Jonathan Sirois his flowers. If Kamal Miller doesn't block that, I think Jonathan Sirois makes that
Yeah,
save,
He
he's
was
right
in
on
right?
position.
Because he
Yeah.
was very well positioned. He recognized the threat immediately after Zardes deflected it. But again, you can't have your goalie or your center back making last ditch attempts to block what should be a goal. That
yeah.
cannot be
Now,
happening if you're going to be a team that's consistently going to challenge.
every time that I see CF Montreal suffer and I'm in front of my TV, I always think of Eve.
Papa, yeah.
Eve, how nervy were you in the first 15 minutes and around that time?
Nervous, I'm not sure. I was definitely filled with dread. I can tell you that. Obviously Austin was at home. They had, a pretty full stadium by the looks of it, and they had the crowd behind them and everything like that. And I said, oh my God, everything here is against Montreal. Like, I will say the reffing, I don't think the reffing was against Montreal. So credit there. But I was like, there's nothing going on here that's good. I didn't know how, I don't know how else to say it. I was like, they've barely strung together 3 passes. Like, she ugly.
It
Um,
was it was tough. It was very very
yeah,
tough. I agree. I agree. It was very
it,
tough, and it's almost got even tougher because in the 20th minute, Austin really showed how superior they were in that game with Dardes dribbling past Camacho and Herrera,
oh yeah.
crossing the ball in the middle of the penalty area. It was only a half chance, yes, but it showed how vulnerable Montreal was at this point of the game, right, Elias?
Yeah, I mean, whenever you see a striker pull a move like that, it's an ultimate show of confidence, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep,
That's no striker does
100%.
that if they feel like the defense is on top of it, and they only do that if they're confident and they see weaknesses in the defense and they see stuff that they can exploit, right? So it's not just about how many stops you make, right? Like Kamal Miller making that stop. It's how you project yourself, right? When you
Yeah.
defend, almost as much work without the ball or when you're not defending. How solid do you clear your lines immediately? Do you stop the attackers on the first try, not the second or third or fourth try, right? So stuff like that will discourage attackers from taking you on one-on-one or trying something a little bit more daring, right? It affects a striker's confidence, and that's not something we've seen Montreal do very often, where they
Mm-hmm.
actively intimidate their opponents defensively, right? They'll
No.
play the ball around them, and when they win the ball, they're good at keeping it. But when it comes to defending
Mm-hmm.
solid and winning the ball in the first try, it's something that seems very uncharacteristic for so many talented defenders on one team, right? You have, Kamal Miller and Joel
Yeah.
Waterman, who are internationally capped. You have Rudy Camacho, who's a veteran. You have Aaron Herrera, who is looking like a very strong ball winner. I mean, again, Lassie is a winger turned wing back, so it's not ideal. But then you have, Victor Wanyama, who's one of the best defensive midfielders in MLS. So you see all these players that should turn into a brick wall, and sometimes you see them not really impose themselves, and I'd love to see them really put in a defensive performance where they give absolutely nothing, where there's just the attack has absolutely nothing going one day, and I haven't seen that in a long time, and it's something that really Montreal's backline should work at developing, but that only happens if
Mm-hmm.
everybody stays healthy, you know
Yeah. No.
Now, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, I like what you mentioned about kind of not really intimidating, because I do think that is something Montreal's been accused of in the past. Even their own coach has accused them of it. In fact, in a previous era, of being too nice to the opposition and not really having that kind of that cutting edge to them. And I did feel like Austin had more of a hunger and more of a threat, like a literal threatening imposing presence last night, compared to Montreal. So I know I like the point that you made about that.
Yeah, and and just before around the 14th minute, there was another chance with John Gallagher on the right who crossed the ball, which deviated again and fell again to Rigoni, who also had an open shot on the net, but this time Sirois was too tall. Eve, you have to appreciate
Mhm.
that save from the Quebecer, right? So that
Totally.
that was that was that
Yeah.
moment of the game where you thought Jonathan Sirois is in his game, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we've had a lot of questions about me first and foremost, have had a lot of questions about Montreal goalkeepers in the past few years. And as it relates to, Jonathan Sirois, I feel really bad for James Pantemis because I feel like his development didn't go exactly as it should have, ideally. And I feel like Jonathan Sirois got a much better chance to develop, to go out on loan younger and earlier and have a more complete experience.
Love it.
So while I hate, of course, that it's come at the expense of an injury to James Pantemis, I think it's an excellent opportunity for Jonathan Sirois, and I thought he had an excellent match last night. I was really disappointed for him more than any, I think, other player out there at the end.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. He had a very good game, and you know what? It's funny because we always talked about what if James Van Temes had that chance of going on loan earlier when he was
Or
18, 19, and
yeah,
I'm pretty sure
or
he would be a complete different player right now, a more accomplished player in my opinion. No.
no, exactly. I've talked about it several times on several
Yeah.
other episodes. I don't feel like he's a true number one for Montreal, but I also feel like Montreal has a lot to blame when it comes to that.
I agree. I agree with that. Now, Elias, you look at those 20 minutes, okay? Until then, what went wrong tactically for CF Montreal? Because there was a clear problem in the first 20 some minutes where Montreal, I don't know, too many holes in midfield with even four players. I felt that Austin was better in the midfield and was finding pockets of space, even if it was a crowded midfield. What did you think about Montreal performance in the first 20 minutes of that game?
I think it's more an accomplishment of Austin than really a failing of Montreal to set any kind of rhythm. It's a
Hmm.
testament to how good Austin in midfield is. There's a reason they're one of the best midfields in MLS, and it's because even if they are outnumbered, even if they do have to press against, even if they're three people pressing five or six, they find a way to make themselves seem like more. They seemed like they were 13 players, 14 players on the field at some moment, just because of the fact that even though they didn't win the ball, there was no time. Every other team, especially when Montreal ends up, recycling, going all the way back to the keeper and then playing very slowly, teams kind of back off. The Austin didn't do that. They pressed. Even Zardes was getting in on it. But the midfield, the second the ball left the back line or the back
Hmm.
three, there was two players on immediately,
Yeah,
right? So it's an incredibly well organized press from Austin. I think that
exactly. Like,
their kind of commitment to that was more indicative of Montreal not being able to set a rhythm, really get like a tempo going, than Montreal having, some unfamiliarity. Obviously, that doesn't help when this midfield four has this combination of four
Never played
midfielders has
together.
never played together, right, in a game. Obviously,
Yeah.
a lot of them have played on the same team together. That's fine, but at the end of the day, when you're playing against MLS opposition in an actual competitive game, you need that bonding
mhm.
through fire of actually having played together in a game, right? So again, this is still an experimentation. This is still, trying to work out the kinks for Fernando Sada, but this showed that there is some promise because there were patches and there were moments of the game where it went well, but there still needs to be some fine tuning and there still needs to be some chemistry built there.
Sorry about the noise. I'm pretty sure it's one of Eve's pets that did something or whatever. It's funny. But you know what? After this whole press of Austin FC, it took a bit of time for Montreal to settle, and
Yeah.
I think when Montreal decided to up their game with Kamal Miller winning the ball in midfield and trying that long range shot around the 26th minute. Yes, the shot was not on target. It wasn't even close to be on target. But do you agree, Eve, that it was the moment where Montreal realized that they need to wake up and try to take control of the game in a certain way?
I'm not 100% sure it was like a collective realization. I think Kamal Miller evidently, took it upon himself to try something, even though, it wasn't a super promising chance by any stretch. So, I'm not necessarily at the point of saying I don't think all of the team was up for it at that point, but I guess given that we saw Kamal Miller take a chance, then it was a start.
Exactly. It was the start of better things for Montreal because right after a disallowed goal from Zardes, okay, let's forget about it because it was disallowed.
Yeah.
Kyoto dribbled past Gallagher on the left hand side and crossed the ball to Sean Rea, who I acrobatically tried his chance with a volley that was saved by Stuver. The shot was on the keeper, but still a great play from the
Yeah.
youngster, Eve, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I really liked it. It was the cross came to him. He was really, really close to like the actual goal line. So obviously he wasn't going to have a whole lot of room to kind of tee himself up. And the keeper was there. And like good credit to Brad Stuver. He did. I thought he was a great keeper for Austin last night.
Very good keeper.
Yeah. That being said, I thought he was willing to take the risk. He was willing to take the ownership of actually shooting, which I think we can probably criticize some other players maybe were a little too hesitant at other points in the game. So for me, I'm always thrilled to see a player take a chance to shoot when the opportunity presents itself.
Yeah, exactly. Elias, how did you rate Sean Reyes' performance in this game? Now, we all know, and you said it here on the Ball is Round, that when Matko Miljevic was injured, for you, the natural replacement for Matko Miljevic was Sean Reyes. Were you happy of his performance against Austin?
Yeah, he's like a little spark plug. He gets the ball and he's very dynamic. He pops up all over the pitch, and he has a much better understanding of space than I or anybody really expected. I think he finds his gaps very well for somebody who hasn't played at an MLS pace for more than 2 hours at this point of game time. So I think that in terms of his evolution, it's only going to get better, and he's going to end up becoming, probably one of the more exciting young prospects if he can keep his development just over the course of the last 2 games. Right, he's understanding the rhythms more. He understands where to be. He's going to score eventually if he keeps getting in those positions, and he seems to have a pretty good relationship with Romel Kyoto, which, as we've seen from Georgi Mihailovic, is the be all end all of number 10s in Montreal. Your career is only as good as your understanding with Romel Kyoto, because he is the talisman. He is, the attacking threat. So if you can develop a good relationship with him, as you see with Georgi Mihailovic, then you're golden, right? We saw some of that with Matko Miljevic, and hopefully we'll get to see more of it when he comes back from injury. But at least for the start, Rhea and Kyoto did have some good moments together where they seem to find each other in the final third, which is exactly what you want from your top 2 attackers. So I think that it's a great start. I think he's definitely started the process of making that position his own. And even if Michael Miljevic comes back and they could play the 2 of them together, that worry that they might occupy the same space, it doesn't worry me as much anymore, because Rhea has shown that he can move from one side to another, and he can kind of play a bit further forward and play in the penalty area, whereas Matko likes to play a bit further back. So I so far everything I'm seeing from Sean Rhea is a positive. I was kind of disappointed to see him subbed out.
Yeah.
During the game.
We'll talk about it a bit later. We'll talk about
Yeah.
We'll talk about this stuff a bit later. Eve, what did you think about Rhea's performance too? You're a pessimistic Eve. So tell me about it.
No, I really liked it. Obviously I think it's a big adjustment for any player with the physicality of MLS, and he is a player of, relatively small stature. So I think there were probably a few moments that maybe that gave him a little bit of difficulty in the match, with just the man-to-man kind of marking and stuff, and the intense pressing. It was really physical at times in the match. But that being said, I like his creativity. I'm not 100% sold on his corners. I think his delivery was kind of really repetitively deep to be an easy catch for Brad Stuver. So I would maybe want to see him work on his set piece taking. But all the same, I like that he took risks. I thought he had really good vision when it came to transitioning into the attack. And I think he's promising. I find him promising.
And Gail says even Eve can be pessimistic about Rhea. Exactly, Gail. I'm really surprised, to be honest. So
really,
so yeah, I'm surprised. When you're not pessimistic, I'm surprised. So whatever.
Okay, fair enough.
Fair enough. But yeah, I really liked also his performance, and I think I was very surprised when I heard comments about Losada and Piet saying that he's not ready or anything. I was surprised. I thought that he was, and he's proving everyone that he is. He is ready. He is ready for that level.
I was wondering, maybe that was some kind of reverse psychology type of thing.
Maybe.
Not bold.
Now, at the 41st minute, Kyoto drove the ball at the top of the box before laying it to a running Mathieu Chouanière. Kyoto was hoping for a cross, but Chouanière decided to shoot in a very difficult and narrow angle, and it was saved by Stuver. Good decision for you, Elias?
Yeah, in that position, you have to shoot the ball. You have
I
to. I mean, I
agree.
understand that
Hmm.
Kyoto wanted
And he has
pointed
a good
wanted a cross,
reputation
but
for that.
exactly, he
Exactly.
hits the ball very well, and I think, I think he's trying to hit that low end to the far post, which is a very difficult save to make when you're a keeper, getting
Yeah.
from your feet, getting your hand down like that is not an easy thing to do. And so, I think he tried to drive it. And obviously, he got a little too much of it and it went a bit too high and right at the keeper. But I
Hmm.
think all in all, when you're in a position like that, you have to take the shot. There's a reason Kyoto held the ball up instead of shooting, because you wanted to find a pass, right? And
Yeah.
it's too close, and there were too many people in between them to play for Spaniel to try and find Kyoto, because if you miss that, it's clear you don't even have a shot on target. You did, all that momentum is kind of gone. So take that shot every single time. You have to,
Hmm.
because
No.
that was one of the problems with Montreal, was their unwillingness to shoot.
Yeah.
So by all means, let it fly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No.
exactly. Exactly. Eve, tell me about Mathieu Chouanière. Played in his natural position as an attacking midfielder. What did you think about his performance? Because he's had some good flashes too.
There were parts that I liked and there were parts that I didn't like. I thought when it came to, especially, it sticks out more the second half, maybe just because the second half was like more recent in my mind. But there were some moments where I think, he made maybe the wrong decision. I think there were some moments when it's kind of like we saw with ZBG last year. He shot when he could have passed and he passed when he could have shot. So some of those moments were a little bit disappointing to see from him, but I thought he blended in, quite well in the midfield. Obviously, it's a really inexperienced midfield, so he kind of had to be one of the more experienced players there. And I thought he did do a good job. Obviously, he did switch positions later on in the match as well.
Yeah.
And that versatility is always, I think, really important, especially as they're dropping like flies right now in Montreal.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we might see him
Yeah.
at center back before too long.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah.
We're really unlucky as of right now. I think that when, for me, playing as an attacking midfielder, I think that Mathieu Chouanière was the man of the game. It's
Oh
as simple, man
boy.
of the match.
Because
Really.
Montreal side, of course, Montreal side.
yes, because we do
So
have like G Sharp who disagrees, I think, pretty vehemently with you here.
Uh, yeah, yeah. G Sharp is very direct with his answers and
I
comments, and you know
appreciate it.
what? And we appreciate it. We appreciate it. You
Yeah.
don't need to agree with us every time. Um, for me, he is an attacking midfielder. He is a creating midfielder, and you know what? I liked what he showed. What he showed. Yes, of course. Sometimes you're going to take the bad decision, but because you don't really know the players that are playing around you yet. So just give him a bit more time at that position, and I'm pretty sure that he's going to be able to be a very good attacking midfielder for that team. And I think he's very talented. He's good on the ball. He has a good shot. He has good vision. So I don't know why he wouldn't be a success. Do you agree, Elias?
Yeah, I mean, he has all the requirements, all the attributes needed to succeed as that deeper 10, if you will. My problem yesterday was just the fact that he found himself a little invisible at times. Right? When he had the ball, he did
Yeah.
the right thing, but a lot of the
Mhm.
time he kind of just faded into the background. And I had to remind myself that Mathieu Chouanier was playing, right? And so a lot of the
But that
time
was
when
the
you're a
whole
10,
team, right?
yes,
That was the whole
but the
team, not
difference
only
is, when
Mastroenière.
they had the
Except for
ball,
like
when they had the ball, the ball went to midfield. Yeah,
yeah.
except for Jota Sirois, who's almost always busy,
Yeah,
right? But
exactly.
every other midfielder, in some way or another, made their presence known, right? Nathan Silva, of course, sometimes for better or for worse, was constantly was seen a lot, right? But Mathieu Chouanier, a lot of the times, wasn't really seen. And as a midfielder, that can be good and bad, right? It's good in the way that you didn't really make any mistakes. He didn't really give the ball up cheaply. He didn't, do anything like that. But at the same time, if you're supposed to be driving play forward, if you're supposed to be one of the people leading the attack, and I don't hear your name that often, then that's a problem, right? So I understand that he may be a bit more in terms of the link-up play and the transition between offense and defense, and Rhea was more of the end game with regards to a move. But I still need to see Chonial insert his influence more because, like you said, he's one of the senior most players on the team now. He's a veteran, like for better or for worse. He is
Lord
now a
have
veteran on
mercy.
this team. Exactly. So
yeah,
he needs to kind of act like it. He needs to, when games get tough, he has to be one of those players in the midfield that takes the game by the scruff of the neck and says, "All right, we're playing
but
it
give
out
him
right
time. I'm pretty sure that with time he's going to be that player. I agree that sometimes he was a bit, he wasn't really, he didn't, he didn't really show his presence, as you said. But I think that in time we're going to be able to see, we're going to see him blossom into that role, and he's going to be pretty good.
Yeah,
so we'll see. That was it for the first half. What did you think about that half, Eve? Like, I don't know. Happy? Unhappy?
No, not happy. I can tell you that.
Yeah,
it was a tough half. I think Austin came super prepared. I think like Austin was ready, and obviously Montreal is still adjusting to new coach, comings and goings of different players, and so on. And I think it showed. It really did. Obvious as well. We had several players who weren't used to being in the starting lineup or who were playing out of position, and I think that showed as well. So it definitely, there is no sugarcoating it. It was a difficult half for Montreal. In my opinion, they were rather lucky to be going in not down a goal.
Interesting. Elias, as a coach, what would have been the adjustments that you would do at that halftime, during halftime?
I think again, it's unfortunate, but I think Saliba has to come off at half there. I think you have to inject a bit of energy into the midfield, maybe a bit more composure.
Even if you would completely kill his morale, and it would have been very tough for the kid.
He's a young player that started his first two games of the season. I don't think that his morale is too difficult, especially because this is where the man management is important, right? You don't just say you're coming off at half and then you just come right. You sit down, you explain to him, right? You have to. He's 19. He's 18 or 19 years old, right? You have to sit down, explain to him the nuances, the good and the bad, and then why you're subbing him out. Don't just say you were bad, so you're coming off, and then that's it, right? You sit down and you explain it to them, right? So they're still kids at the end of the day.
That's my kind of pep talk.
Depends on.
That's my kind of pep talk. You're bad.
It depends on how you're told you're coming off, right? Because again, a lot of the players' morale can be kind of improved when they understand when they're better understanding what's going on in the coach's head, right? If they see the coach as this like mysterious figure that does what he wants and then doesn't really explain himself to the players, then all of a sudden I'm left thinking, oh, well, what did I do wrong? And then I get in my own head, and then it's a vicious cycle. So if I wanted to bring in, a striker, so if I wanted to bring in someone like Shonzo or Sunusi Ibrahim to kind of have a two-striker tandem with Rhea in behind, and then you have Chouanière and Wanyama in the midfield, which is kind of what I was hoping would happen at half, then explain it to him, right? Explain, I went for more experience, I went for a bit more attacking, we need to kind of take control of this game. Boom, that's the only reason. Right.
Okay.
So it's something like that. And that could have been a fairly simple explanation, right? He's at the end of the day, it's still a professional environment, and you're a competitive team. So it's no hard feelings. It's just for the good of the team.
Yeah, business is business. But you know what? This didn't happen. So Saliba stayed on the field. But we felt at the beginning of the second half, nothing really happened. We didn't have any clear chances for maybe 30 minutes in the second half. So there's really nothing. There's not a lot to say on the beginning on the first half of the second half. But it was mostly Montreal that controlled the game, and had the most half chances in a way. What changed tactically for you, Eve? What changed? What made Montreal take the upper hand in that second half?
I felt like Nathan Saliba was given more room to kind of roam on the pitch, and I think that did suit him, and I think it therefore suited the team as well. I thought that he was a lot more active and a lot more involved. I know Elias, he said he should have come out at half, but I did feel like I saw him more, and I saw him more in a positive light. Like I said, I saw him kind of relaying, if you will, between kind of the back half of the pitch and the front half. And I thought it suited him better than the role he had been trying to play, or maybe the space he had been trying to inhabit during the first half. And I appreciated that. I thought it was good. To be honest, I kind of felt like Austin dropped their intensity a little bit coming out of the gates. And
it's
I think
always because Austin is good or bad that we were good or bad. Come on, guys.
No. I'm trying. Jeez.
I'm joking.
Oh,
I'm joking. I'm joking.
No. Like I legitimately feel like I saw it like that.
I agree.
Okay.
No, I agree.
Thank you.
I agree too.
Well, there we go. Thank you.
I was just joking.
God almighty. But I think like that played to Montreal's favor because although Austin did grow into the half, evidently, Montreal was able to grow into the half earlier, which allowed them kind of to match Austin's intensity better by the time Austin was ready to bring it, if you will, come say the 70th minute of the half.
Okay. Interesting. Anything to add, Elias, on that?
No, I mean, I completely agree with Eve. Montreal was able to better establish their rhythm, and obviously Saliba did have a better second half or a better time at the start of the second half. I still think that they brought in a second striker, maybe a bit too late because they didn't really get the chance to capitalize on this control that they were able to exert on the game. But ultimately, it was nice to see that they showed some fight and they didn't just say, "Oh, the first half wasn't really our thing, so we're just gonna sit there and let it happen to us." They kind of did. They did show some pushback. I'm guessing some of the adjustments that the coaching staff made at halftime obviously bore fruit. But at the end of the day, it's the big sustainable changes come through substitutions, right? Tactical changes only go so far, especially if it's not a massive tactical change. It was more some fine tweaking stuff that happened at halftime. So teams adapt to that fairly quickly. But if you bring on a substitute, then it completely changes the profile of your game. For example, if you bring on a striker, so I think that bringing on Chinonso 4 happened a little bit late. I would have done it a little bit earlier because they had all this momentum and they couldn't really capitalize on it. And I understand that it was a reaction to them playing better, more so than them going into the second half knowing that they were going to end up dominating the ball. But I still think that, had they had two strikers, had they had a bit more of an attacking oomph, that they really could have made that second half start really count.
Alas.
Yeah, but you know what? You talked about Chinonso 4 coming in. First of all, it was for Sean Rea. And second of all, he wasn't on the pitch as a second striker. He was more as an attacking midfielder and staying in behind of Kyoto. What did you think of that, Eve? First of all, substitution for you, was it a good substitution for him to come in for Rea? And second of all, his positioning on the pitch.
So as far as taking Rea off, I have to assume that, like, for me, tactically speaking, and as far as the, creativity and stuff, no, I'm not thrilled that he came off. But if it's a question of the fact that he is so early in his MLS career, and it's just a matter of making sure that he doesn't kind of run out of steam, because that can often happen to players who aren't quite used to that. And like I said, there had been some intensely physical moments in the first half, so it could have something to do with that, certainly. But let's say the Sean Rea was feeling like, as fresh as Daisy out there. Then I was disappointed that he came off. I thought he was probably the best creative spark that Montreal had all match, as Alain said with his beautiful dad joke, he was a ray of sunshine on a gloomy day. Oh, I'm
Oh
sorry,
yeah,
Alain.
yeah.
I
Thank
don't
you,
mean to
thank
like
you.
groan at
I
you.
I I find myself in you, like that feeling. I love it. Thanks, man.
Well, I thank you. I thank you, Hattie, that you don't like dish those jokes out to us
I
on a
love
regular
them. I love
basis.
them. Honestly, I love them.
Okay, anyway, back to so yeah, no, I was disappointed that Sean Ray came out. Like I said, there could be more to the story, just as far as it being so early in his career. We're not 100% sure how equipped he is to handle the physicality of MLS and so on. But as for Chinonso 04, because let's face it, no matter how I feel, he did come in. I really, really would have liked to see him as a second striker. I really would have, I think he does remind me a fair bit of Romel Kyoto overall. Like the physical profile that he has, the build that he has, I feel like he could hold up the ball really well and potentially, drop deep to assist and stuff. Um, so I was kind of disappointed. I felt like he was a little bit of a square peg in a round hole in the pitch, and I'm not 100% sure that it was a wise gamble from Hernan Lozada. I felt like he wanted to do well. Like I didn't like, but it just felt like he wasn't 100% sure of what he should be doing, and he looked like
I
he wasn't
agree.
quite in the right place.
Yeah, I completely agree. I don't know, Elias, if you agree also with even. I feel that 04 didn't find his place on the pitch. Tactically, he wasn't sure what to do.
Yeah.
He was out of place. What do you
Yeah,
think?
I
Like,
mean, for the 10 minutes before the injuries kind of forced all these chaotic substitutions, I
yeah,
think that he it felt a lot like Miami, where there was no real translation from the build up in the defense to an attacking
yeah,
any kind of attacking move, and it seemed like the second they built out of the back, they were kind of out of ideas because there is no
yeah,
purely creative midfielder. Mathieu Choinière would drop deep and he would kind of help play the build-up play, but then the second you would get forward and the ball would go to the forwards, they would get the ball from 40 yards out. But they're receiving the ball way too early.
yeah.
So it felt again like they were just a little bit out of ideas almost. So I think that instead of capitalizing on that momentum, it almost cut it short.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you talked about the injuries, and that's
Yeah.
the title of our episode.
Yeah.
Very very interesting
Oh,
idea.
sad, sad.
It's Elias's idea, and I love it. At the
I'm very proud of that.
72nd minute, Samuel Piet had to be replaced because of an injury. How much of a blow was that, Elias? Samuel Piet played a very decent game as a right center back.
Yeah.
He's the heart and soul of the team. Like let's there's no other way to say to
Yeah.
describe Samuel Piet's influence on that team. So how important is that injury for the chances of Montreal?
I mean, it's just another issue, right? Fernando
Mm-hmm.
Lozada to figure out, because you had, at least in the interim, a very reliable and very efficient solution in the we have no right center back option, right? You had Samuel
We
Piet,
have no
who
center
is
back,
not a center.
period.
Exactly. So he's
Yeah,
not a
three
center back by
injuries.
trade, but exactly, but his profile and his skill set slotted in perfectly, right? With the ball winning and the communication and the technical quality. So you were fine, more or less, in the interim until Joel Waterman, Robert Torkelson, and George Campbell kind of get back on their feet. Now without Samuel Piet, again, they haven't really spoken about the extent. We're going to find out more about it, tomorrow,
During the week, yeah.
Tuesday, Wednesday, exactly, when we get to kind of bother the technical staff about it when they come back to Montreal. But at the end of the day, there is now, unless Joe Waterman is finally fit, because we haven't heard any updates about him. He wasn't on,
Yeah,
the injury report. He wasn't listed
but
as
he
out.
was in Montreal. He
He
didn't.
was
He
in
didn't
Montreal.
travel
He
with the
didn't
team.
travel with the team, exactly. So we're going to get some more updates this week. And again, hopefully Joel Waterman is fit. Again, how fit will he be, given that he missed time? He missed time due to injury, both in preseason and hasn't played a minute of regular season soccer yet. So again, how fit will he be is another question. Will they end up being forced to rush him back because of the fact that there's simply no center backs now? If Samuel Piet's injury is one that won't let him play against Nashville, it's just another complication in its off season slash beginning of the season that just they can't seem to catch a break.
No.
Yeah, and let's talk about the tactical adjustments that Losada did. So, Eve, you had Rida Zuhir that came in for Nathan Saliba, and you had Sunusi Ibrahim that came in for Samuel Piet. And what happened is Aaron Herrera dropped back to a right center back position with Mathieu Chouanière playing as a right wing back. Rida Zuhir playing next to Victor Wanyama, and of course up front you had Sunisi Ibrahim, Chinonza Ofor, and Romel Kyoto. So what did you think about the changes of Hernando Zara? Was there another way to another possibility for Hernando Zara? He was like forced to do those changes.
I mean, well, obviously, if Samuel Piet had to leave for injury,
Yeah, no.
period. Yeah.
But was there another possibility? That's what I mean.
Jeez Louise. Looking at who was, I mean, you could have potentially brought in Zachary Belgial to be like a proper, right back of some kind. I think Iliadis has a relatively defensive profile, but it's a weird circumstance to bring him into for his debut. I know he did come in later on. Honestly, like, I really don't think so. I really don't think so. I can't see a better way out of it.
Elias?
Again, short of bringing on Brogiard, Herrera is going to have to drop back to right back, either to right center back either way.
Yeah,
and then at that point, it's just a preference between Chouanière and Brogiard. And again, we saw last year Chouanière would get the nod over Brogiard consistently last year as well. In terms of who would play second fiddle to Aaron Herrera. So it seemed to be like, at some point you could only play mix and match so much before you just have to make a decision. And Mathieu Chouanière at least had some game time and under him.
Wow. Yeah, and it wound up saving them a sub that they would end up needing later on anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Now, on the other hand, Josh Wolf, the Austin FC coach, made also some very interesting changes, tactical changes, with Ruti coming on for Zardes and Nick Lima coming on for Diego Fagundes. And it kind of tipped the scales in that game. The Argentinian forward first hit the post in his first attempt at the 80th minute. 4 minutes later, another substitute, Ethan Finley, was denied by Sirois after a good service from Nick Lima. And finally, at this 88th minute, Lima crossed the ball that was headed down by Gallagher in the path of Urruti, who found the back of the net. There was a lot of pressure from Austin FC in the final 10 minutes. Eve, why did Montreal back down, in your opinion? What happened? Why did we see Montreal really absorb the pressure and felt overwhelmed by the way Austin FC was?
I mean, that's the thing. It's kind of completely counter to what Hernan Lozada has kind of marketed as his style of play, right? I mean, credit for sure to Austin, because they didn't necessarily create a lot of opportunity for those transition moments to happen. They were really wise in their possession of the ball. They were really efficient in moving the ball up the field. So I think they definitely deserve a lot of credit for how much Montreal suffered in those, say, last 20-ish minutes of the match. But also, to be honest, it kind of felt like they started to play for the 0-0. It really did, like that's how I looked at the match. I said, like, they weren't committing as many bodies forward in the attack when they got that, when they had the chance. They weren't crossing as deep, It honestly felt like Montreal was playing for the 0-0. And obviously, if you're not taking risks and moving up the field, then you're going to suffer. You're going to have that pressure on you a lot earlier in the phase of play.
Yeah, Elias, like I still don't understand why teams do that. And then 10 minutes you're playing away from home. You've, you're kind of playing well in a way where you're able to neutralize the. But yeah, before the 80th minute, like in the second
Right.
half,
Okay.
Montreal and Austin were playing on were really level.
Yeah.
They,
Okay.
they
Okay.
were
Fair enough.
they
Fair
were
enough.
able to neutralize the opponent's threats. And at one point, there's a switch in your head, and you're like, "Oh, we're gonna play a 0-0." What happens in the player's mind?
I I think this was, after Uruti had those two really good chances he missed. Um, I think it kind of dawned on Montreal that they were losing this game, that they were in a losing position at least. So I think that they kind of kicked into survival mode and just said, let's just get a point and get out of here and forget this ever happened. I think up until those two chances from Maruti, even after the substitutions, which had almost like an immediate effect, there was still some confidence in
Mm-hmm.
Montreal. And then those two near misses were just like, okay, wait a minute, we have to like pump the brakes because or else we're leaving here with no points. So I think that's when they kind of
Yeah.
went into into their little armadillo shell survival mode type thing where they just said, let's get a point instead of nothing. I don't. I think they kind of almost, especially after that, with Romel Kyoto getting injured and getting subbed off as well, which we didn't really
Yeah,
speak about. But it was a question more of
That's a
if, but
blow.
not if. It wasn't a question of if, but when Romel Kyoto was going to get hurt this season, and he wasted no time doing that. But I think on top of that as well, with your MVP and your leading scorer out, you kind of just said, let's get out of here with whatever we can. Let's try and salvage even a point and get out of here. And that's what they did. And at a certain point, we were talking about this earlier. If your defense does not instill confidence and deter attacking confidence, then teams are just going to ramp up. And at some point, the
Yeah.
dam is going to break, and it happened, right? So
Exactly.
you just have to establish this defense before you go into survival mode. You can't be like, okay, we're going playing for a draw now after having 80 minutes of allowing chances and not stopping them on the first try and clearing your lines immediately. So they held up for longer than I expected, but at the end of the day, I was not at all surprised. And I told my friend who was watching the game with, we're going to get a classic 90th minute Montreal drops points. And they were early. It was 88th, but it
it
was
was early, right?
disappointed, but not surprised.
Okay, interesting. Now, Emil had a question for us, and
Yes.
when you look at the team's record right now, Montreal has 2 losses, which is bad, of course. But don't you feel that there was an improvement in Austin for CF Montreal compared to the Miami game? And Emil says, I know the mood is gloomy, but I'm perhaps alone in feeling optimistic. So, what is your ray of sunshine and what's most positive after 2 games? Eve, that's a question like tailored for you.
Alain, actually, God love him. Oh my God, Alain's comment like lined up so perfectly with that question. It's not even funny. Like I don't know if that was choreographed or what, but for me, Sean Rea, I know, there were comments that he's not ready. To me, he looked really damn close to ready. And that excites me. I love to see a homegrown player make the leap. We haven't seen it nearly enough in Montreal at all, like far, far and away. And we've seen several players signing in CPL, signing in MLS Next Pro from Montreal, whether they signed a contract with the first team at some point or not. So that excites me to see that we have at least one homegrown player. I'm pretty sure Jonathan Silva, I'm high on him as well. So that's a ray of sunshine to me, is to see 2 homegrown players looking a lot closer than other homegrown players from the get-go.
I agree. And you know what? Great transition to the second question of Emil that was directed to me. I don't know why. It's very, very surprising. A special question for Soccer
Oh, I don't know why.
for academy starters yesterday. So how do we go about playing the youth in the next games Do we continue playing the same youth, so Saliba, Rea, or do we rotate the play to play the other youths, so Vilsa, Iliadis, Zuhir? Um, Honestly, I love that question. First of all, I'm very happy to see the youth getting a role in with that team, and I can't wait
Not
to hear
you.
Elias on that. But for me, it's important in the first few games of this of a season is to find your starting 11. So right now, you need to find your starting 11. Do you need to rotate? Perhaps, but you also need to give minutes to those young players to see if they are going to fit in your starting 11. So it's a bit of both, in my opinion, Emil. We have to play them still, those same players, Soraya, Saliba, and so on. But also we have to give a chance to the other youth, so the Iliadis and the Vincent and the O4. So it's a mix of both. But the first 10 games of the season, that's where you do your experiments in order to have the starting 11 that's going to carry your team for the rest of the season. Um, Talking about the youth, Elias, you know, tell us about how proud we should be as Montrealers to see so many homegrowns getting their first minutes and being able to play at that level, because not even one player was completely surpassed by the level of play.
No,
Even if Saliba had, his moments, he was pretty good at times too. So what do you think
yeah,
about all that?
no. It's a massive endorsement of the academy, right? They set a new record for new club record, right, with the most homegrown players ever to start a game, right, with four. They had Sirois, Rea, Chouanière, and Saliba that are all academy players, and that's obviously if you're going to be a club whose main philosophy is to develop and promote youth, then this is a great start. And this should also be maybe a bit of a confidence boost to some of the younger players that haven't seen that many minutes, right? Someone like Jules Anthony Vilsain,
Yeah,
someone like Rita Zouir that are saying, when are my minutes going to come? Well, clearly the club is committed to playing the youth. So you will get your chances. And, someone like Sean Rea, who's taken his chance and kind of run with it, you will get your opportunities. At the same time, I agree that they weren't completely outclassed, but they showed that there's still work to be done, right? And these
of
are by no
course,
means
and it's
wonder kids,
normal.
right? Sean Rea, I do think is the most promising youngster on the team, but they are by no means, wonder kids that are going to get sold Ismail Kone style, at least yet, right? Remember, at the beginning of the season, nobody was really high on Ismail Kone. People had Rita Zouir above him. I had Rita Zouir
Yeah.
above him. I found him
Me too.
a much more finished product in the first few games. And then obviously he proved everybody wrong by developing at an insane rate. But
Hmm.
again, we are still very early. There is a reason for optimism given the fact that we have a precedent in Montreal that the club does know how to develop youth, does know how to develop young talent. The only
Finally.
question now is can they deploy them effectively, right? Because there is no doubt that Nathan Saliba
Yeah.
and Rida Zouir and Sean Rea and all Julien Trivisset are massively talented players. But if they're not played in the right spot, if they're not played in the right situations, and if they don't evolve in the right tactical formation, then they may not be able to showcase it like that. So that's another thing that is occasionally difficult for youngsters to just pop into a system and then thrive. Is sometimes it's not a system catered to you, and you're youngsters. So the system shouldn't be catered to a youngster. You're not established enough for a team to completely reform the way that they play around an 18-year-old kid. You're not even Lionel Messi wasn't the game wasn't built around him until he was much older.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's going to be a process for them to learn how to adapt, and that's why it's very refreshing to see the academy play three back and play a very similar style, because when they make that jump to the first team, it is not some kind of alien formation they haven't played with yet. So that'll be nice to
Hmm.
see. But at the same time, you do have to give these kids the benefit of the doubt. You can't just be like, be Ismail Kone right now, or else we're sending you back to the academy. That's
Yeah, and you know
unfair.
what?
So they still need time, and they have been
Ishmael
impressive,
Kone.
but they still need time.
Ishmael Kone and the Wonder Kid type, it's not something that
Yeah,
you see every year in any team
exactly.
around
No.
the world. It's
Exactly.
usually once every
It's a persona.
5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and it's not
Unless you're
something
FC
that.
Dallas. FC Dallas
So
is
unless
like
but you know what? FC Dallas has tried so many youngsters that were
Yeah.
flops, right? And
I suppose.
we tend to forget that because we're not big followers of Dallas. But you go see their stat sheet at the end of the season, and they have sometimes like 30, 35 players that they used,
Yeah.
and you have 10 of them that you never see again. So you have your flops also when you're a team that really basing your whole your whole plan on youngsters and on the academy. And you know what? I'm okay with that. And you look at those players that are having minutes right now; they seem to have a very good future within the game. The Salibas, the Chouanières, even if he's now a veteran. And all of them, and even Rida Zohir, I was happy to see him get minutes because I think that he's going to be a very, very good player for the team. Moving on, we have some questions. So first of all, we have Amin that asked us
Yes.
the question. Um,
I will get there. I
you
promise.
will, you will, you will. So, are you worried about the team not scoring 2 games in a row, especially with very few chances to score, and Kyoto being the only offensive threat so far? Before answering Eve, I'm going to ask you to put the other 2 questions of Robbie and Justin
Okay.
because all of them are kind of the
Yeah.
same mold, in my
All right.
opinion. So let's start with
All right.
Robbie. Either way, I think you will have lots to talk about. So, question for
Us? Not really.
tomorrow: is Toy in the Losada doghouse? And lastly, from Justin, thoughts on Toy not getting minutes. I know he struggled last season, but how have Sunusi, Ofor, and Eliade passed him in the pecking order? Is this a Bjorn 2.0 situation in the making? So, Eve, first of all, are you worried about the lack of attacking situations that we're having? And
Yeah.
second of all, what about Mason Toy? What's going on with it?
I'm definitely a little bit concerned about the lack of cohesion in the attack. I think decision making has been a little bit lacking. And again, because Montreal is playing the youth, it's not a massive surprise that that's going to happen. It's just unfortunately, it has hardcore, real ramifications for Montreal that is happening. So I think it is, and unfortunately, there is like no veteran playmaker type player there to assist and to guide those youngsters. So it really is on the coach, who was an attacking midfielder himself. So God willing, he's able to, bring some gems of wisdom out from his career. But that being said, yeah, it does concern me a little bit, especially given that Romel Kyoto recently left the match injured. And we don't know, of course, how long he's going to be out for it, or if it's just a little knock and he will be fit for next week. But if Romel Kyoto is going to be out for any length of time, I am deeply concerned. I'll say it flat out like that. As for Mason Toy, in the doghouse, my goodness, I hope we don't have a doghouse again. I don't like that. It made me sad. Um, I truly don't know why he's not getting minutes. I don't think Lozada or anyone has given a good reason as to why he's not getting minutes. In their time with the press, Elias and Hady, I know that you guys can speak better to that than I can. But obviously, he is still coming back from a really rough season. So I hope that he does get some minutes in soon, because I think for his mentality as someone who is naturally hard on himself and, sets crazy high standards, I think it is really, really important that he does get a look in. Because like I said, as someone who can empathize a lot with him, who's really hard on myself as well, I really hope he does get a chance. I just worry about his well-being.
Elias, I'm gonna let you react on what Eve said, but first of all, I agree with Eve. The fact that it's kind of normal because of the fact that we're playing the youth. That for me, it's a process, and I'm kind of I'm not gonna say confident because that's not the right word. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just kind of happy that this process is being done and is being followed because I feel that down the line, if we continue and if we're really serious about that process, about that plan, it's gonna you're gonna see the results. The results are gonna be here. Maybe not this year, maybe the year after, but we're gonna see results, and it's gonna be very beneficial for CF Montreal. Not financially specifically, but within results. And we see how Philadelphia went through the same process, where at the beginning with Jim Curtin for the first 2 3 years, Philadelphia was at the bottom of the league, and they continued on playing youth and academy players, and now we know how much of a force Philadelphia is. And whenever they buy players, they don't go and buy them for 15 millions and 20 millions. They do exactly like Montreal is doing right now, trying to buy players within MLS, and sometimes trying to find that gem from outside of the league, with the Gazdag, with the Kai Wagner, and those
Oh,
players from
Carranza. Okay, I
outside.
was like, who the hell did they buy in MLS with Carranza? Okay.
Carranza, Shibilko, at
Yes.
one point.
Well, Shibilko, I don't
No,
think
Shibilko
we
from
spun on him.
Shibilko was in Germany, and then
It was no, he was in Chicago.
it was in Czech. Yeah, exactly.
No, but I
No,
mean, I don't think he's worked out super well for them. No, but I was trying to think of
no.
who it was in MLS, and it was Julian Carranza.
and and now
He's the
Torres, and now Torres.
and
Now
yes, now
Joaquin
Joaquin
Torres.
Torres.
Yes. So, Elias, I'll let you react on all of that. There's a lot to say, so go ahead, man.
Yeah. No, but I mean, Eve is 100% right. If with no Ramel Kyoto, even if Sean Ray has shown some really exciting things, there's obviously reason to be worried. He's your leading scorer. He's been your leading scorer the last 3 years. There's a reason why he's done so well in Montreal. It's because he's been the driving force behind that offense. Whether Georgi Mihailovic has come and gone, other very strong attackers have all come and gone, and he has stayed, and he has been productive that entire time. So with Roman Kyoto out this early in the season, other years it's taken him a while before he's hit that injury snag. So at least the team has time to get some momentum. But now, when they're looking to him to help drive the momentum just to get this thing off the ground, he's out. And again, it's a non-contact injury, which is always concerning. Um, especially with someone with his history. So again, hopefully we get some good news this week, and it's a knock, and at worst case scenario he misses a game or something, and then he's back. Fine, because he looks to be in great shape this year. Like physical shape.
Yeah.
He's looked to have lost, he's lost some weight. He's running, he's zipping all over the field, which is something that we haven't really seen from Romel Kyoto. So this is a very nice version of Romel that we haven't seen in a while. So hopefully, again, the injury isn't too bad. Sean Rea has shown some really good things against Miami when he came on. Him and Ofor really got along well. So there's something to kind of look forward to if Kyoto does miss an extended period of time. There's other things to be cautiously optimistic about. But at the end of the day, no Romel Kyoto, it's it's difficult to overstate just how much of a loss that is.
It was interesting also during the friendlies. We heard a lot about the link up between Sunusi and Mason Toy. So that's something also maybe that we could see in the next few games too. So maybe that's why Losada was like hiding Toy as a surprise. As a surprise for the future, but we'll see.
That's a choice.
Yeah.
We'll see.
I
We'll see
think
what's
calling
gonna
him
happen.
Bjorn 2.0 is a bit dramatic.
It's harsh. I find that really harsh.
It's only been 2 games this year, right? So again, the fact that you have like 5 or 6 strikers on the team at this point makes it that minutes will be kind of scarce. But again, give it, if we're a month into the season and he still hasn't played a single minute, then yeah, you can kind of start hitting the panic button. But it's been 2 games, right? And especially if Kyoto's going to miss time, this is the chance for Mason Toy to kind of get some minutes, get some confidence, and kind of show that he's still very much a viable option.
Yeah, let's wait and see what Losada is going to do in the next few days and games for sure. Guys, let's move on to the next subject. 11,487 minutes. That's how many MLS minutes Samuel Piet played with the Montreal shirt. Adored by the fans, or most of the fans sometimes hated too.
Yeah.
How important is he for this team, Eve?
Oh my god. I don't think you can overstate the importance of Sam Piet. Whether it's as a leader on the pitch, whether it's, in reaching the Quebec community as a local hero, whether it's his leadership with the Canadian national team and participating at the World Cup. I mean, for me, he's a honestly, like, I understand he doesn't play like a very sexy position or anything like that, but he is like a franchise player for me. He is a guy who, in my opinion, should never leave Montreal until he retires. To play for another team. He's he
A
just has so
franchise
much.
player.
He just has so much going for him, both on and off the pitch.
Interesting.
And he's the kind of player you could see ending up at the club too after he retires.
Oh,
in
yeah.
some kind of
Oh,
management
absolutely.
administration role.
Or coaching, maybe he wants to coach. You never
Even
know.
coaching, yeah.
We'll see. Maybe he has other plans. Elias, how Piet has evolved a lot in his game with Montreal, and since joining the team tactically, a lot. So can you just explain how he evolved, what he improved on, and just give us a bit of the new Samuel Piet, the 3.0 Samuel Piet?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing was under partially Thierry Henry, mostly Wilfried Nancy, was the fact that he's become so much better with the ball. Future coach of the crew.
Oh my God, Alas.
But
I love it,
ya.
Alas. Sam Piet, future coach of the
Smack
crew.
ya.
that's
Okay, to be
a bit
fair,
hard.
I think you need to work with Alain's other quote here.
Yeah.
yes,
Piet is
Like-
the much better.
much less
Glue
shit
with
houses,
the club,
but
glue within the club, with the fans, with the media. So yeah, I agree with that.
But at the end of
as
the
well
day,
holding up.
his evolution under partially Thierry Henry, mostly Wilfried Nancy, has become that of a much more efficient distributor of the ball, right? Just by the sheer requirements of the style of play, you need to become better at that distributing and that cross field ball to the back post from the right side is an extremely new thing that we've seen from Piet, who has always been kind of this ball-winning playmaker who's hard-nosed, who wins the ball, makes a 6-foot pass, and then just retreats to win the ball back again whenever possession is lost. And he's turned into someone that actually has to be marked. It's something that defenses have planned around a lot last season, and hopefully we get to see it a bit more next season. But it's something
season?
that has been added to his game. Well, we haven't really seen it that much this season, just because Montreal struggled to really dominate the game. It very well, hopefully, it does happen, especially if we're looking to play a bit more vertically, get more balls into the box. Samuel Piet is one of those players that may kind of be overlooked, but then all of a sudden, boom, there's a perfect ball to the back post, and it happened a dozen times, last year, where it was very strong. So hopefully we can still.
He was able to cross the ball a lot of times too last year. Now, name one Piet moment you will never forget. If you guys are not ready, I can start.
I'm ready. I'm so ready.
Go ahead, Eve. Go ahead.
I'm probably gonna steal the obvious one. He scored against Toronto at home at Stade Saputo. What more can you ask for? Like, that is basically the trifecta. You score a goal that, in a match that your team went on to win, you score against Toronto, and you score at Stade Saputo. For me, he completed the trifecta. I'm good.
Great moment. Elias, do you have one?
It's the making of every Montreal legend. You have to have done all three. So there you go.
Okay.
But
did you have another moment?
My first moment was the first time I spoke to him actually as a member of the media. He was super nice. He shook my hand. We exchanged a few words, and this was back when I first started, and the imposter syndrome was very intense, and I had no idea what I was doing there. So it just exchanged a few words, and it's always gonna stick with me because it's one of the first players from the club that actually addressed himself to me as a human instead of just as answering a question. As a microphone.
Exactly.
Nice.
but it's
It's
it's it's
so
one of
true.
the people that
Sometimes you
actually, like,
feel like a
made eye
microphone.
contact and had, a very brief conversation with me, and so it's something that I cherish still to this day, and it's definitely one of my favorite personal Samuel Piet moments.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm gonna choose another moment. So no, you didn't steal our moment, Eve. So that's great. Uh, for me, it was the game of Canada against Curacao, and it was at
Which
Stade
one?
Saputo. It was at Stade
Oh, okay.
Saputo, and that was when Anthony Jackson Amel was the striker of Canada back then,
Oh
and
boy.
it was a long
Wow.
time ago, of course. And I didn't know much about the Canadian national team at that time. I was a simple observer. I wasn't really a member of the
God love
media
you.
yet. It was a
Yeah.
long, long time ago. And at one point, I see a guy on the pitch, and I never heard about him. And he's running everywhere. He's winning every ball. And I look at the stands, and I see half the stands, cheering for
Yeah.
him, and I was like, "Who the hell is this guy?" And then I learned,
And then
I
the
thought,
campaign started.
and then the campaign started. So that was before he joined CF Montreal, and I'll never forget that day because that's when I discovered Samuel Piet, and I was very, very excited when he signed with CF Montreal. I thought that he was going to be a very important piece, and you know what? Look at him now. So
Yeah.
he holds the record for most MLS minutes for Montreal, and
I
not
love it.
CF Montreal, but Impact or whoever you want to call it. Uh, you know, so happy to see and to be able to witness Samuel Pet on the pitch and also in the media because he's so friendly with the media. So,
Love it.
so love it, love it. So
Yeah.
here's to another 20,000, Samuel, and hope
No pressure.
hope we'll see you for a long, long time here with a CF Montreal shirt.
Indeed. And we have Anna who shared a nice moment. I think it's just worth sharing, which I appreciate. So kind with Anna's family when they met him at a Seattle practice. Genuinely one of the good guys. Give him a lifetime contract. That's
Yeah,
nice.
yeah.
That'd be nice to
His
see.
his
Absolutely.
he's the one to keep. So that's it for CF Montreal. Moving on to more gloomy stuff with Canadian soccer this time. Just another week in Canadian soccer with a lot of news regarding our dear old Canada soccer. So we're gonna try to be as brief as possible because there's a lot to say
Yeah.
regarding this issue. So on February 27th, Nick Bontis finally resigned from his position as Canada Soccer president. In his statement, he mentions, "While I have been one of the biggest proponents of equalizing the competitive performance environment for our women's national team, I will unfortunately not be leading this organization when it happens. And I acknowledge that this moment requires change. It requires change. Serving as a volunteer for this organization and witnessing the tremendous achievements we've been able to accomplish together has been some of the proudest moments of my life. Olympic success for our women's national team, genuine diversity on our board of directors, including our first ever female vice president, our first men's FIFA World Cup goal at Qatar 2022, winning the bid to host the 2026 FIFA World Cup at home." Eve, were you surprised about the statement, or it was just
Um,
something waiting to happen?
oh yeah. No, I feel like there was so much public pressure, it took a little while, but finally advertisers were also starting to say the same thing. And obviously those or sponsors, I should say, sorry, sponsors were starting to say, or starting to ask questions like semi-publicly, I guess. As well, of course, Canada Soccer has been requested to testify in front of the government, I'm not sure how to call it, but the Heritage Committee as part of the government, and we're gonna have some women's national team players testify there as well. So it was just like all going down. And I'm not 100% sure exactly how much of the blame rests on Nick Bontis' shoulders. But that being said, obviously, he is at the end of the day the head of the organization. He is the face of why Canada Soccer is where it is right now. So no, not surprised at all.
Now, Elias, I'm gonna be honest. I cringed at this statement when I first read it. Just him mentioning that he's a volunteer. For me, I was like, dude, like really. Like what did you think about that statement? Did you have the same reaction as me, or not really?
I had to read a few times because I would eye roll halfway through and then miss bits of the statement and have to reread it because it felt very passive aggressive. It
Yeah.
felt like look at everything I've done for you people, while not having done much. uh and it obviously it felt inevitable given the fact that you have two very public labor disputes with your two biggest teams. Obviously that's going to
Yeah.
happen. His time was limited. Even if the sponsors didn't get involved, I think it was just gonna, at
Yeah.
some point,
The
there
writing
has to
was
be
on
a
the
reckoning.
wall. Yeah.
Exactly. Other than that, I mean, he it's not really that much of a hit against him, given the fact that he's going to end up sitting on the CONCACAF Council as the Gail is
Oh
100%
God,
right.
don't get
Don't
me
hit your boy
started.
on the way out. But he's going to sit on the CONCACAF Council now, which is, in some ways, in a lot of ways, a promotion because he's going to be the vice president of North America, representing North America on the CONCACAF Council.
Stop,
So
Elias.
reading that
I'm out of
statement,
here.
because
Stop.
it had already been announced that he was going to get that position before he
I
resigned.
know.
So
Yeah,
him resigning was more of
I
just
know.
a fine. Here's one thing, so you guys will leave me
I
alone.
was a
This way I
Right.
volunteer.
can go
Now I'm
back.
getting paid in a way, right?
Exactly.
Mhm.
That too, right? So it's look, it's I got absolutely nothing from the statement. I learned that he had resigned, and I could have, guessed 90% of that statement.
Yeah,
Um,
same.
just off of
Yeah.
having followed the last 2 years of national team stuff alone.
Yeah.
And I was unsurprised to read the entire thing, and so it was honestly a chore to read it all. But yeah, I mean, disappointed but not
Now,
surprised.
Now, a couple of days later, Canada Soccer announced Charmaine Crooks as new acting president, while Kelly Brown takes on the position of acting vice president. Then, the following day, Canada Soccer issued another statement saying Canada Soccer has announced that a deal in principle has been reached with the women's national team players on an interim funding agreement for 2022. The terms
Normal.
of the interim agreement mirror a similar deal with the men's national team players that includes per game incentives and results based compensation. Is it me, or there's nothing to be proud of here?
Um, Well, it's March of 2023.
Exactly.
I
Exactly.
mean,
Like you're announcing an agreement saying your players will be paid for previous years. Like
congratulations.
it shouldn't even be an announcement, man.
Right, it's embarrassing.
It is. It is. It is.
God
Like
almighty. Can you
really,
guys
and
switch nationalities?
I'm sorry, but I feel like I'm in a third world country. Like it's just not normal. It's just not
It
normal.
no, I mean, by this point, can I even still be disappointed? I don't know, because it's not that I expect any different, right? But I don't know. It's really hard for me to stomach. It really is. I'm glad that the women's players were able to agree to it. So I assume that they must have interpreted the deal as far as 2022 goes. I'm glad that they were able to come to something that they accept. I'm glad that they'll be compensated finally. But yeah, it's pretty shocking.
It is pretty
I mean,
shocking. And if you're
Amy Walsh kind of said it
Yeah.
best, where you can't expect progress when the new people are still members of the old guard,
yeah,
right?
We're gonna come
So
to
exactly.
that, yeah.
you don't have much of a change, and at the end of the day, you can't expect anything, any kind of substantial and significant improvement when you're in a situation like that, where people that are involved with the problem are now replacing other people that were involved with the problem. So I
Yeah, but we're gonna read on that a bit later. But yeah, I completely agree, Elias. And you
Yeah.
know what? If you think that this is going in the right direction, we're very far from there.
Yeah.
Because the Canadian Soccer Players Association issued a media Q&A 2 days ago, and I'm
Yeah.
sorry we tried to cut it and to put
But
it
Yeah.
but it's impossible. Like everything needs to be read, needs to be heard, needs to be known by everybody loving Canadian soccer, because this is unacceptable. So I'm gonna read it all for you. Just please bear with me because it's very important for Canadian soccer.
Okay.
So let's start with the first page. Canadian Soccer Players Association Media Q&A on March 3rd, 2023. Thank you for your interest in the Canadian women's national soccer team. In order to enable the players to better respond to multiple media inquiries, the Players Association has prepared responses to a number of questions received from media this week. Those questions and the Players Association's responses are below. First of all, how do the women's national team players feel about the interim funding agreement announced by Canada Soccer yesterday? The interim deal is just that, an interim deal. It is an attempt to quickly address the CSA's failure to pay anything to the women's national team members in 2022. The women's team was willing to accept it as an interim agreement, but it is not a final deal. It also does not solve the deeper issues around pay equity and equalization of supports and resources across the national teams that caused the players to take labor action in connection with the She Believes Cup. Second question. How do the women's national team players feel about the resignation of Nick Bontis and the promotion of two female board members to Canada Soccer's president and VP roles? Do they feel it is enough change in leadership personnel, or do they think more of the current staff and board members should be replaced in order to impact change? As impressive as Charmaine Crooks is as an athlete and a Canadian, from the women's national team's perspective, she represents the old guard on the board. She was on the board when it approved the Canada Soccer business deal in 2018, and she has always appeared to the players to be closely allied with Nick Bontis. Unfortunately, in the decade she has spent on the board, the players have seen nothing to suggest that she was working to promote the women's national team's interests. Third question. Do the women feel they are currently close to signing a deal with Canada Soccer? No. While progress has been made, the women's team has been in negotiations with Canada since January 2022, and there is still a lot of work to be done. Fourth question. If not, what factors are currently holding up this deal from getting done? There are a number of them, including one, persistent failure by Canada Soccer to make proper financial disclosure to the players, which puts them in a position of having to bargain in the dark. Two, the financial constraints imposed by the Canada Soccer business deal, which sees third parties and not Canada Soccer read the success and popularity of the national team. And third, the desire by the women's national team players to ensure that the eventual agreement establishes fair and equitable standards and supports for the women's national team that will continue to ensure equitable treatment even once media attention on these issues has died down. Fifth question. Since they took the job action in Florida, has Canada Soccer provided the women with the financial record they wanted to see? We can move on to the second page. They have provided some limited financial disclosure, but it was inconsistent with previous disclosures made by Canada Soccer and has yet to be explained. I can't believe it. Canada Soccer is still working to set up a meeting with someone who will be able to answer the player's question, which we understand will not occur until the second half of March. Sixth question. What items are on the women's list of demands to be addressed in a new deal? Proper funding for the women's national team program for 2023 and for the youth national program that are at the very top of the list right now. So I would have liked a more precise answer, but you know what? This is already a good thing. Seventh question. In what areas do the women's national team players feel that the men's national team is receiving more than they are? It's important to note that right now, both teams' budgets have been cut. However, the appropriate comparison isn't to the men's team's budget now. It's to the men's team's budget in the lead up to the World Cup in 2021-2022. Even the very high CSA financial reflects the spending disparity between the programs. Meanwhile, the women's national team players are being told that we can't even run camps in all of the FIFA windows for 2023. And that the camps we do have scheduled will be shorter and will bring in fewer players than usual. All of that impacts the quality of our preparation for the World Cup. Eighth question: will the women's national team players take action in connection with the upcoming camp scheduled for April? The women's national team players have advised Canada Soccer that while they intend to play in the upcoming FIFA window scheduled for April, that participation is contingent on meaningful progress being made with respect to a number of bargaining issues. Ninth, will players from the women's national team be testifying next week before the Heritage Committee? If so, who are they? Yes, on March 9th, so in 4 days, the Heritage Committee will hear from Sophie Schmidt, Janine Becky, Quen, and Christine Sinclair. So, guys, reactions. What do you think about that statement? How important is that? How disappointed are we?
Like,
Go ahead, Eve.
I don't know. I can understand. I think Canada Soccer tried to put a band-aid on a bullet wound, honestly, by naming Charmaine Crooks. Obviously, it's the natural successor, given that she was vice president, and it's only an interim position. But that being said, it looks good on paper to have a woman, when there's so many disputes, particularly with the women's team running the show. But to hear all of this refuted, and again, I've said it on previous editions of our podcast, obviously public sympathy is 100% going to be with the players because that's who the public is attached to. So until Canada Soccer is able to come out and concretely refute the claims that the players are making.
But they can't.
Exactly. How the hell are we going to be able to say, oh, well, let's move on. It looks like we're making progress, because they can't. I am waiting with bated breath for this this testimony on March 9th. I am so pumped. I cannot wait to hear from them. I hope that financial disclosure is going to happen. I really hope that the government is able to make them finally pull out their receipts, because Lord knows that the men's team has asked for it, the women's team has asked for it, and we're not getting it. I'm so glad that they came out with the statement quickly. I'm glad that they came out with a statement that was cohesive and covered things so the individual players can tackle these questions on their own.
You know what, Elias, I said everything I needed to say regarding this, and I think that us, talking about it on our pod, we're doing our part, in my opinion, and I think it's very important. I just don't like, other pods, if they're not talking about it, for me, it's a big no-no, because we need to be a part of this. We need to make sure that this message is being heard by everybody. So, Elias, do you have any reactions regarding that statement? I love what Alain said. Sorry, I just needed to talk about that. Good for the Canadian women's national team. They just tackled Soccer Canada studs up. What do you think about all that, Elias?
Reading that entire thing, it was kind of, when in a movie someone gets shocking news and it's just a very high-pitched noise and everything else is kind of muffled down. That's my entire state of mind while reading the entire statement the first time and reading the entire media Q&A, because it's just it's very difficult at this point to not be completely jaded with Canada Soccer and just completely an absolute cynic. And I find it, you always try your best to kind of see okay, they have to end up doing the right thing. Eventually they'll do the right thing. And you're more trying to convince yourself than you're trying to state an actual opinion, because there's no way they're going to get away with it. And then they get away with it. But there's no way this time, there's no way they're getting away with it.
Well, I mean,
and they do.
They have, so I'm the government is making them bring their, I hope they're making them bring their receipts. I hope.
Yeah. So we'll see. Again, I'd love to say that, oh my God, they've got them this time. They have to give up the financial statements. But we've said that. How many times have we said that at this point? That they have to do it now.
Yeah.
The time is now. The reckoning is upon us. But then it didn't happen. So
the ability to be sketchy, I gotta tell you.
Exactly, and I don't see how if this happens the way it's supposed to, I don't see how this isn't like an apocalypse level event for Canada Soccer, where they have to and when I mean completely clean house, I mean rip it down to the studs and rebuild.
Yeah. Well,
Which,
I recall.
you have to do sooner rather than later if you're going to be in a World Cup cycle that you're hosting for the Men's World Cup. You will be hosting
Right.
the biggest sporting event on the planet. So you have to get your house in order now, because if you
Right.
go into this World Cup with all this nonsense, it's going to not just be a national problem now. You're going to look a fool in front of the entire sporting world, not just the soccer world, not just Canadian sports. You're going to look a fool in front of literally billions of people if you're in an ongoing labor dispute with your players while you're hosting the biggest sporting tournament of that 4-year run.
Yep.
So, I mean, Alain just said it best. Women kept national team soccer relevant in Canada for years. It's been
Yep.
said 1,000 times, and it should be said 1,000 more times, because it's
I didn't mean that to just-
100%. It's 100%.
I'm so sorry. Hady and I keep
but it's
looking on it at
100%
the same
true.
time.
So it's for the past 15 years, yeah. I mean, the men's national team has finally found some success,
Yeah.
and I'm super thrilled because that
But
means
the
both teams are doing
women
well. The
carry
women's
this
team has been
federation.
good for so long. Nobody
Yeah.
cared about national team soccer
Yeah.
until the women's team started
No,
finding success.
Okay. Like, Holy Gale is listening, so I know Holy Gale can back me up if need be. There were so many years I referred to the women's national team as our competent national team, because that's what it was.
Yeah.
And I mean, Canada Soccer is absolutely to blame, but so much credit to the dual nationals who chose Canada during that difficult time when Canada Soccer was, again, being mismanaged at a different level. But
Yeah.
It's time to move on, I think, and hopefully we're going to see a turn of events pretty soon, and we're going to see positive movement within Canada Soccer. So
I'm so pumped for March 9th.
Yeah, we are, but I don't think we're going to see anything. Like, we're going to hear statements, but what is it going to do? We're not really sure. So we'll see. Let's
talk
let's
about it next week.
We will talk about it next week for sure. So that's it for that section of the pod. And finally, it's time for social media. So Elias has prepared social media for us.
You keep waiting. You wait a second. I'm going to find it. All right. There we go. And I feel really bad because we just spent like a whole lot of time talking poorly. But okay, let's get started.
It's okay. So let's start with the first tweet.
Yeah, this comes from Canada Soccer, actually. Congratulations to Desiree Scott, who received the Order of Manitoba and Queen's Jubilee Medal over the weekend. And, one of the most prominent national team players, ever. So this is very nice to see her getting some recognition. Is this a case of some crisis management PR as well for the Canada Soccer to be tweeting this out?
I don't know. I mean, it was a couple of weeks ago actually that she got that. It was, I forget the exact date. I'm really sorry, but it was a couple of weeks ago. And obviously she's been absent from the She Believes Cup because unfortunately she had an injury, and she's still recuperating from that. But I mean, it's good news. So I agree with you completely that, why would you not amplify good news at this time if you're Canada Soccer?
Yeah, and I wanna make my mea culpa towards Desiree Scott, because in my head, it was time, for Canada to move on from Desiree Scott, because for me she was not at the level Canada Soccer needed to play at one point. But you know what? She's been a lot better. She continued on improving even at 33, 34, and she's doing very well even in NWSL, and she deserves that medal. She deserves to be in the squad still. She's still very important, even if you do have some very good players like Quinn, like Julia Grosso, like all those players that can slot into that defensive midfielder roles.
Yeah.
But I think that Desiree Scott still has a place and still has a part to play with Canada
Yeah.
soccer and with the national team.
And with the World Cup coming up, absolutely agree.
Yeah, 100%.
All right. Tweet number 2.
So it comes from, translated from French. Of all the people from CF Montreal Academy, the two who seem to be the closest to the MLS level are Sirois and Rea. The two who had a 2-year transition to, not PLSQ, he corrected it, it's CPL. These two players had a 2-year stint in the CPL. Saliba and Zouir have talent, but moving from the PLSQ, which is semi-professional soccer, to the MLS is a big gap. In the long term, a loan would be preferable. Izzy, do you think that this should be more standard practice? And if so, what does that speak to the validity of the academy in the PLSQ instead of choosing MLS next?
Okay, I'm a very big defender of the club in that decision, choosing PLSQ. The reason behind it is very simple, and I talked about it a few times here on the pod, so I'm just going to be very brief. For me, you're playing against men. Ergo, it's pretty good for youth, for 17-year-olds and 18 years old. Now, yes, of course, playing in the PLSQ or playing in the Canadian Premier League, it's 2 different levels, but they're not so far apart because most of the players that are playing in the Canadian Premier League are former PLSQ players, League One Ontario players, League One BC players. So they were playing at that level maybe a year ago. So the gap between the two is not that big. So I don't agree with that statement from Amin. I think that it might take a bit more time, but it's only a matter of games, not a matter of years. So maybe in 10, 15 games, they're going to be able to adjust if they're good enough. If they're not good enough, it doesn't really matter if they were loaned or not.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be able to see and to know if they're at the right level after 10, 15 games that they've played. So I think that they'll get there. I still don't understand why Zuhair is not getting more minutes, but that's my personal opinion. But I'm pretty sure that they're going to reach that level pretty soon.
Mm-hmm. I know. Shall we move on?
Yeah.
All right. This is from Ballon and is translated from French again. The record of Canadian teams in MLS since the start of the season: 0 wins, 5 losses, 1 draw, 5 goals scored, and 11 goals conceded. Eve, is this cause for concern for Canadian clubs? Is this, just getting a difficult start?
I feel like this is not atypical of how Canadian clubs tend to start the MLS season. I wish I had some historical stats to bust out, but unfortunately I don't. But from my recollection, typically, Canadian clubs, they have to start on the road. Vancouver, not necessarily quite as much because, of course, their stadium can be covered. That being said, though, I think it is generally a struggle for Canadian clubs early in the season. Obviously, they have to depart elsewhere to do their preseason on top of it. And that can be certainly mentally taxing on the players, especially those who have small children they have to be away from and stuff. So overall, I'm not super concerned, not super shocked. Not to me, it sucks, but it's fairly typical because of the challenges imposed by the Canadian climate in MLS.
Heidi, you were nodding pretty vigorously. Do you have an alternative opinion?
It's for me it's bad. I feel that it's bad to see this record for Canadian teams, not for CF Montreal, because CF Montreal, as we said during this pod, is starting a new process, has a long-term plan, playing youth academies, and it's normal to have a bad.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay. It's normal to have a bad start of a season. But for me, it's not really normal for teams like Toronto FC that has invested so much into their first team. And for me, if I'm a TFC fan, I'm really not happy to see the team lose their first 2 games or Did they
They
lose the
lost and
second
draw.
one?
Lost one and drew
Yeah,
one. They drew last week.
they drew. Yeah, but
They
they
drew
drew
Atlanta.
last minute, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So
No, it was
yeah.
like partway through the second half.
Okay, whatever.
Yeah.
So for me, I would be much more concerned if I'm a TFC fan than a Montreal fan. And with Vancouver, I would be very, very, very disappointed because, again, this club is trying to invest and is trying so much to be relevant, and it's very hard for them. So hopefully, they will be able to show what they're all about, because they do have some very good players like Ryan Gold. That's tremendous. And I'm pretty sure we're going to see a better Vancouver Whitecaps this year, but it's a slow process. Again, we're just two games. We just have 2 games played in the season, so it's very early to sum up. And to react on those results. But I like to wait 10 games before I'm giving a very
10?
good opinion.
I mean, 10 is almost a third of the season.
It's a third of the season.
Yeah.
That's
so
for me. That's
10
how much
is
it
a
takes.
lot. Okay, fair enough.
That's how much it takes for me. It's as simple as that. So we'll see.
Well, I mean, one Canadian team is definitely going to get points soon because Montreal is visiting Vancouver. So
there we go. There we go. Somebody.
At the very least.
There's going to be a snowstorm and the game is going to be postponed. Yeah, moving on to the fourth.
Yeah.
Eve.
Yep.
This one is from Phyllis. Between the annoying late night schedule, poor Apple TV experience, and the anonymous team on the field, I'm going to have a hard time getting into CFMTL this year. Is this an indication of some of the more casual fans not being that interested in the team this year because of, just the things laid out here? We saw that Austin has the current active record for the longest consecutive sellout streak at the Q2 Stadium, and it's only a couple hundred more than Stade Saputo. Does Montreal have a problem, bring in more casual fans, Eve? Do you think that's something that needs to be addressed?
You know what? I actually had a little bit of a conversation with Felice last week, where he mentioned, he used to he would bring his son to the games, particularly during afternoon or, late afternoon games. But, doing matches this late at night, especially if you have to do transit, any level of direction, it's going to be too late for him. And so I feel like that is a challenge, and it really sucks because Montreal does just have evening games all season long, and it's good for not TV, it's good for streaming. There we go. Yeah. I got to say it right. It's good for the live at home viewer, but yeah, no, I agree. It's going to be difficult for the casual away viewer or somebody who has to balance their family and going to the stadium. And obviously, I think the best way to get into following this team is to go to the stadium, because we've got supporters groups, animating the whole thing from start to finish, which is awesome. So I don't see fault with his statement.
You have a young kid as well, right? I mean, would you be
does he go to the games?
Would you be willing to stay up that late? But someone with who's obviously, you're looking at the future going, I could bring, I could bring a younger kid to a game, but if the game is at 8 at 7:30, 8 o'clock, is that something that you have in mind right now?
No, for me, I don't know. Maybe it's in the way I'm brought up as Lebanese, born abroad. When you have a big event, it doesn't really matter at what time it is, and that's how I was when I was young. Even if I was 5 or 6 or 7 or 8, I would go to weddings and I would stay up until midnight. So even if I was 6 or 7 or 8, so the time doesn't change anything if it's an event. Now, will I buy season tickets for my son that's 6 years old if all the games are at 7:30? No, I won't buy a season ticket for him, but I will go to games from time to time one, two, three, four, 5 games. It doesn't really matter at what time it is. At the end of the day, yes, the game, it's important to have the young children go to the game. It's important, but the game is not made specially for them. It's made for the 18, 20, 25, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70-year old people. So it's not only for the children. So at the end of the day, you have to find that sweet spot. And for me, 7:30 is the sweet spot for everybody to be content. Now, not everybody is going to be very happy, but I think it's important to keep in mind that it's not only the youth that can enjoy soccer, it's everybody, whatever the age.
Yeah.
Yeah. No? Yeah? Maybe?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Alrighty.
You guys didn't react, so I'm like, okay, did I say anything
No, I mean,
wrong?
I don't have a
Did
son,
I
so
answer the question? Or
Yeah.
No, but I mean,
Good.
I made a good point that people still bring their kids to Habs games, and those are almost always in the evening.
Exactly.
So it's
Okay,
it's
fair
true,
enough.
but when it comes to consistently bringing kids, because like you would fall in love with the team if you go to multiple games, it could be difficult, especially if you're stuck with a late midweek game, for example, that'll
Yeah.
not have too many people coming out, especially young people.
Yeah, and I think also just to answer Felice's comment, it's kind of normal that the casual fan is not gonna jump on the bandwagon when the team has lost its first two games of the
Yeah.
season. If you're on a streak of three
Yeah.
winning game, like a winning game, like 3 winning games in a row,
Yeah.
then I'm pretty sure that a lot of people are going to be hyped up, and we'll see other tweets from other people saying, "Oh man, I love the CF Montreal team." So, yeah, keep in mind that we're in the culture of the moment right now, and right now, of course, the whole thing around Montreal is that we don't have some experienced players, so we're not good because we lost 2 games. It's the end of the world. Let's go kill ourselves. So,
Oh my God.
that in a way, it's like that. If you go read social media, and if you live your life through social media, you feel that everybody is in a deep depression, and we're like, okay, guys, it's 2 games. Like, just chill.
Okay.
So yeah.
No. Chill. I agree. Chill.
So yeah. So moving on to
Alright.
the first tweet.
Last one, yes, and finally some good news from Maxime. A little over 3 years ago, I caught the eye of this exceptional woman at a tailgate of CF Montreal. She would not only become the love of my life, but also the best mom for our mini face, which I guess is a
The nickname of their
Last
girl.
night she said yes. So from everyone here at the Balls Round, we'd like to wish Maxime and Jennifer a very happy engagement. Finally, some good news coming out of the club,
Yes.
and it's very sweet to see that you bond over a love of
Hopefully
CF Montreal.
humans.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
they're
I
both
love
awesome.
Maxime. I love Maxime. He's one of the guys I think that I met through Twitter at the very beginning of when I was starting to be someone in a way in 2017, and he's been following all my projects since then. We even had a few very heated discussions, and we met, of course, at tailgates and in front of at the games and everything. He's such a great guy, and his daughter is so cute. And yeah, so I'm so happy for him. Congrats, man! Really, congrats.
Okay. And Jenna's also very awesome, by the way.
I don't know Jen.
Okay, I do.
Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, I do. Can confirm both are excellent human beings. Yes, their kid is very adorable. Annabelle is super cute. My mom was obsessed with her when she came. So yeah, no, really, really happy for them.
Yeah, same.
Well, congratulations on your engagement. That's great to hear. We'd love to see it. Hopefully the club can make a nice little announcement. That'd be cute too. The first home game, just a little.
Oh my God, that would be so cute.
Wouldn't
Yeah,
it?
and I'm
That'd be
sorry,
awesome.
Alain, I'm not gonna answer your question. He asked, does their kid technically belong to CF Montreal?
I don't
Man, Alain, you're on fire tonight, man.
They
You're
already
on
have a spot in the
fire.
academy, so it's okay. There's a spot in the academy waiting for them.
Yeah, there will be a spot in the academy because we know that there's gonna be
There's Girls Academy.
there's
Girls
going to be
Academy,
Girls
yeah.
Academy pretty soon. So yeah. So that's it tonight for our episode of The Ball is Round. So thanks a lot, Elias, for that segment of social media. It was really, really interesting. Thanks, Eve, as always, as being as pessimistic as ever. We love it. And thanks to everyone that's been listening to our show. I'm so happy to see so many regulars come and connect with us and discuss with us, ask us questions, and so on. Please feel free to retweet our shows, share our shows on all social media. And of course, if you are interested, you can always participate and help us grow the project on our Patreon page. So our content is always going to be free for sure. But if you want to help us, feel free to join our Patreons. So that's it for today. Thanks a lot, everyone. And see you next week for the next episode of The Ball is Round.